Lieutenant Maya Chen had been running the morning physical training sessions at Naval Base Coronado for 3 weeks, and she was already tired of being invisible. At 5'4" and 120 pounds, Maya didn't look like what most people expected when they thought of a Navy physical trainer. She didn't have the bulging muscles or the intimidating presence of the male instructors who strutted around the base gym like peacocks. What she did have was a decade of experience training the most elite warriors in the world, a mind that understood human biomechanics better than most doctors, and a work ethic that had earned her the nickname, the Machine, among Navy SEALs who actually knew her. But here at Coronado, filling in temporarily while the regular PT staff dealt with a personnel shortage, nobody knew her reputation. To them, she was just the little Asian woman who handed out towels and reset equipment in the base fitness center. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. Maya arrived at the gym at 500 hours, same as always. The sun hadn't yet broken over the Pacific, and the air still held that cool dampness that made her think of her hometown in Washington state. She unlocked the facility, flipped on the lights, and began her routine check of the equipment. She was inspecting the cable machine when she heard the doors bang open behind her. Well, looks like they got the help in early today. Maya didn't need to turn around to know the voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Derek Hastings. She'd been dealing with him since her first day. Hastings was a supply officer who'd never seen combat but carried himself like he'd personally won every major conflict since World War II. He spent more time in the gym taking selfies than actually working out, and he treated everyone he considered beneath him, which was nearly everyone, like they were there to serve him. "Good morning, Commander," Maya said evenly, not looking up from her inspection. "Gym opens at 5:30. "I don't need some gym bunny telling me when I can work out," Hastings said. His footsteps echoed as he walked closer. "I'm a lieutenant commander. That means I come in when I want." Maya straightened up and turned to face him. Hastings was a big man, 6'2" and thick through the chest and shoulders, though most of that thickness was heading south toward his midsection. He was 43 years old and looked every day of it, with thinning blonde hair and a face that was starting to show the effects of too many nights at the officers' club. "The gym opens at 5:30, sir," Maya repeated, keeping her voice respectful but firm. "Safety regulations require qualified personnel to be present during all training activities." Hastings stepped closer, using his size to try to intimidate her. It wasn't the first time a man had tried this tactic with Maya, and it wouldn't be the last. "And what makes you think you're qualified?" he asked with a sneer. "You look like you'd blow away in a strong wind. How'd you even get this job? Let me guess, diversity hire." Maya felt the familiar burn of anger in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. She'd learned a long time ago that men like Hastings fed on emotional reactions. "I'll finish the safety check," she said calmly. "The gym will open on schedule." She turned back to the cable machine, effectively dismissing him. It was a calculated move. Men like Hastings couldn't stand being ignored. "Hey," he barked, "I'm talking to you." His hand clamped down on her shoulder and spun her around. Before Maya could react, Hastings had backed her against the wall, one meaty palm pressed against the concrete beside her head. He leaned in close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "You need to learn some respect," he hissed. "When a superior officer tells you something, you listen. You don't turn your back like some." "Commander Hastings." The new voice cut through the gym like a knife. It was quiet, controlled, but carried absolute authority. Hastings froze. Maya couldn't see around his bulk, but she recognized the voice. Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Nash, the senior enlisted advisor for Naval Special Warfare Group 1, one of the most respected men in the entire SEAL community. "Step back from Lieutenant Chen," Nash said. "Now." The color drained from Hastings' face as he processed two pieces of information. First, that a Master Chief, technically junior to him in rank but vastly superior in every other way that mattered in the Navy, was giving him an order. Second, and more importantly, that the Jim Bunny he just pinned against the wall was a commissioned officer. Hastings stepped back like he'd been shocked. Maya straightened her PT uniform and met Nash's eyes. The Master Chief was in his early 50s, built like a brick wall, with silver hair and a face that had seen more action than most people could imagine. He looked at her with something between amusement and concern. "You okay, Lieutenant?" he asked. "Yes, Master Chief," Maya said, "just explaining gym protocols to the commander." Nash's expression didn't change, but Maya saw the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth that meant he was holding back a smile. "Commander Hastings," Nash said, turning his attention back to the supply officer, "I believe you have an early meeting with the base co this morning." Hastings had gone from angry red to sickly pale. That's not until 800. "It is now," Nash said. "Captain Morrison asked me to track you down. Something about inventory discrepancies that need immediate attention." He seemed pretty insistent. It was a lie, and everyone in the room knew it. But it gave Hastings an out, a way to leave without further humiliation. The supply officer looked between Nash and Maya, clearly wanting to say something, but whatever shred of intelligence he possessed told him to keep his mouth shut. "Right," Hastings muttered. I'll head over there now." He walked toward the door with as much dignity as he could muster, which wasn't much. Just before he left, he shot Maya a look that promised this wasn't over. When the doors swung shut behind him, Nash let out a long breath. "That guy's a piece of work," he said. "I've handled worse," Maya replied. Nash studied her for a moment. "I know you have, but you shouldn't have to deal with idiots like that here. Why didn't you tell him who you are?" Maya shrugged. Would it have mattered? Men like him don't care about credentials. They only care about appearances. "Fair point," Nash admitted. He walked over to the weight rack and started checking the plates, falling into the easy rhythm of the inspection Maya had been performing. "How much longer are you stuck in this assignment?" "Another week," Maya said. "Then I'm back to Little Creek." Nash nodded. Naval Amphibious Base Little Creek in Virginia was home to SEAL Teams 2, 4, 8, and 10. It was where Maya had spent most of the last 7 years, developing training programs that had revolutionized how the Navy prepared its special operations forces for the physical demands of their missions. "The boys miss you," Nash said. "Ever since you fixed Johnson's shoulder problem, half the team thinks you walk on water." Maya smiled. Petty Officer Johnson had been weeks away from being medically discharged when Maya had identified that his unfixable rotator cuff issue was actually a scapular stability problem that could be corrected with targeted exercises. 3 months later, he'd been back to full duty. "How is the team?" she asked. "Good, deployed right now, actually. They should be back next month." Nash finished checking the weight rack and turned to face her. "Listen, Maya, I know you don't like to make waves, but Hastings is a problem. That wasn't okay, what he just did." "I know," Maya said quietly. "You want me to report it?" Maya considered. Reporting Hastings would mean statements, investigations, paperwork. It would mean becoming that woman who couldn't handle herself, who needed a master chief to fight her battles. Even if she was completely in the right, even if Hastings had committed clear assault, the Whisper Network would paint her as weak or as someone who caused trouble. "No," she said finally, "but I appreciate you stepping in." Nash frowned. "He's going to come back at you. Guys like that always do." "Then I'll handle it when he does." The Master Chief looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew Maya well enough to recognize when her mind was made up. "All right, but if he tries anything else, you come find me. Or better yet, you handle it yourself the way I know you can. Show him what happens when you mess with the woman who trains SEALs." Maya laughed. "That would definitely make waves." "Sometimes waves are necessary," Nash said. He checked his watch. I've got to run, but seriously, Maya, watch your six with that guy. Always do, Master Chief. Nash left, and Maya returned to her inspection routine. By 5:30, a handful of sailors had started arriving for their morning workouts. She greeted them, checked them in, and provided assistance when needed. Professional, invisible, just the way everyone seemed to want her. But all morning she kept thinking about the look in Hastings' eyes before he left. Nash was right. This wasn't over. She just didn't know how right he was. That afternoon, Maya was in the gym's small office catching up on paperwork when she overheard voices from the main floor. She recognized one of them immediately, Hastings. She quietly moved to the doorway where she could listen without being seen. "I'm telling you she's not qualified," Hastings was saying. "I've been watching her. She doesn't even lift. How is someone like that supposed to train real warriors?" "I don't know, man." The second voice belonged to a young ensign Maya didn't recognize. "She seems to know her stuff." "She's a diversity hire," Hastings said flatly. "The Navy's so desperate to look progressive, they'll put anyone in a position of authority. It doesn't matter if they're actually competent." Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't move. This was valuable intelligence. She needed to know what she was dealing with. "I heard she's only here temporarily," the ensign said. "Some kind of fill-in position." "Exactly," Hastings said. "They shipped her out here because she couldn't cut it wherever she was before. Mark my words, that woman is going to get someone hurt. She has no business being in charge of physical training." The conversation drifted to other topics, and Maya stepped back into the office. She sat down at the desk and took a slow, deep breath. She'd faced this kind of prejudice before. In her first years in the Navy, when she'd been one of the few women in combat support roles. During her graduate work in exercise physiology, when professors had assumed she was in the wrong classroom. When she'd first started working with SEAL teams and had to prove herself 100 times over before anyone would listen to her assessments. She'd overcome it all through patience, competence, and an unwavering commitment to her work. She'd told herself that results spoke louder than words, that eventually people would see past their assumptions and recognize her value. But sitting in that small office, listening to a mediocre officer trash her reputation to anyone who would listen, Maya felt something shift inside her. Maybe she was tired of being patient. Maybe she was tired of having to prove herself over and over again. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nash. "Heard Hastings is running his mouth. You sure you don't want me to handle this?" Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "I'm sure, but thanks for the heads up." She set the phone down and allowed herself a small smile. If Derek Hastings wanted to underestimate her, that was his choice. The next morning, Maya arrived at the gym to find a notice posted on the door. It was an announcement for a base fitness challenge scheduled for the following week, a competition open to all personnel, with events testing strength, endurance, and overall physical capability. The prize was a 3-day pass and bragging rights. Maya might have ignored it, except for one detail. The notice was signed by Lieutenant Commander Derek Hastings, who had apparently volunteered to organize the event. She was still reading when Nash appeared beside her. "Interesting timing," the Master Chief observed. "Very," Maya agreed. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Maya folded her arms. "That Hastings is setting up a platform to embarrass the unqualified PT staff in front of the whole base." "Bingo," Nash said. "He's been telling everyone who'll listen that you don't know what you're doing. Now he's creating an opportunity to prove it." Maya read through the event list. Bench press max, pull-up competition, 3-mile run, obstacle course. Standard stuff, designed to favor big, strong men like Hastings himself. "He'll probably enter himself," Nash continued. "Make a big show of how a real officer performs. Might even recruit some of his buddies to participate, stack the deck a little." "Probably," Maya said. Nash looked at her. You could file a complaint. This is pretty clearly retaliation for yesterday. Or, Maya said slowly, I could enter the competition. A grin spread across Nash's weathered face. Now you're talking. You want some help training. Maya laughed. Master Chief, I appreciate the offer, but I think I'll be fine. I know you will, but if you're going to make a statement, might as well make it count. He lowered his voice. How do you feel about a little wager? What kind of wager? Hastings has been bragging that he can bench 315. I happen to know he's been inflating his numbers. I've seen him in here, and he's barely pushing 275. If you could somehow demonstrate the difference between actual strength and gym vanity. He trailed off meaningfully. Maya understood. Nash wasn't just suggesting she compete. He was suggesting she expose Hastings as a fraud in front of everyone. It was tempting, very tempting, but it was also risky. If she came out swinging too hard, she'd look vindictive. She needed to be strategic. Let me think about it, she said. Over the next few days, Maya watched as Hastings recruited participants for his competition. As Nash had predicted, most of them were officers from comfortable desk jobs who'd been hitting the gym regularly, but had never faced real physical challenges. Hastings had also roped in a few enlisted sailors, younger men who looked like they spent every free moment lifting weights. What Hastings didn't know was that Maya had already registered for the competition. She'd done it quietly, through the online form, using her rank and last name only. Lieutenant Chen, one of dozens of entries. She also noticed something else. While Hastings was busy organizing his spectacle, he'd been neglecting his actual duties. Inventory reports were late. Supply requests were backing up. And according to the rumor mill, Captain Morrison, the base commanding officer, was starting to notice. Maya filed that information away. She had a feeling it might be useful. The day before the competition, Maya was running through a light workout when a young sailor approached her. Seaman apprentice Jennifer Torres, one of the few women who'd registered for the event. Lieutenant Chen, Torres said nervously, can I ask you something? Of course, Maya said, pausing her stretching routine. I signed up for the fitness challenge, but I'm kind of freaking out. Some of the guys have been saying that women shouldn't even be entering, that we're just going to embarrass ourselves. Torres looked down. I'm starting to think they're right. Maya studied the young woman. Torres was maybe 20 years old, fit and capable looking, but clearly shaken by the pressure. Why did you sign up? Maya asked. Because I thought it would be fun, and because I wanted to prove I belong here. Torres' voice got quieter. I'm trying to get into the Navy's search and rescue program, but I keep hearing that women can't handle it physically. Maya felt a familiar ache in her chest. She'd been where Torres was, doubting herself because everyone around her insisted she should. Can I tell you something? Maya said. The men who say women can't handle physical challenges are usually the ones who are afraid of being beaten by a woman. Torres looked up surprised. You know what I've learned in 10 years of training some of the toughest warriors in the military? Maya continued. Physical strength isn't just about how much weight you can lift. It's about efficiency, technique, mental toughness, and refusing to quit when things get hard. I've seen 120-pound soldiers outperform 200-pound men because they were smarter about how they used their bodies. Really? Torres asked. Really, Maya confirmed. So here's my advice. Don't compare yourself to the men, compete against yourself. Focus on your own performance, your own improvement. And when someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, make them prove it. Make them show you specifically why you're not qualified. Most of the time, they can't. Torres straightened up, some of the uncertainty leaving her face. Thank you, ma'am, that helps. After Torres left, Maya returned to her workout. But the conversation had crystallized something in her mind. This competition wasn't just about putting Hastings in his place. It was about showing every young woman on this base, every person who'd been told they weren't enough, that the people who underestimated them were wrong. That night, Maya got a call from an old friend, Commander Lisa Park, who ran the physical training program at Little Creek. "I heard you're entering some fitness challenge," Lisa said without preamble. "Please tell me you're going to destroy this jackass who's been talking trash about you." Maya laughed. "Word travels fast. The SEAL community is basically a very fit, very dangerous knitting circle," Lisa said. "Everyone knows everything. So, are you going to show them what you can do?" "I'm going to compete to the best of my ability," Maya said diplomatically. "Oh, come on. I taught you half of what you know about exercise programming. Don't give me that modest routine. This guy pinned you against a wall and then tried to trash your reputation. You have every right to make him regret it." "It's not about revenge," Maya said. "Of course it's not," Lisa agreed. "It's about justice. It's about showing people that you don't mess with Maya Chen. It's about representing all of us who have had to deal with jerks like this." She paused. "But mostly, I think it's about you finally deciding to stop hiding." Maya was quiet for a moment. "I'm not hiding." "Yes, you are," Lisa said gently. "You've been hiding your whole career. You do incredible work, but you do it quietly. You let other people take credit. You don't make waves. And that's a valid choice, Maya. But it's also a choice that allows men like Hastings to keep behaving the way they do because they never face consequences." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe it's time to make some waves," Lisa said. "Show them who you really are, not the invisible PT tech, the woman who developed the training program that reduced SEAL injuries by 40%, the woman who has a master's degree in biomechanics and has published papers in peer-reviewed journals, the woman who earned the respect of the most elite warriors in the world." After they hung up, Maya sat in her small quarters for a long time thinking. Lisa was right. She'd spent years being careful, being modest, staying under the radar. It had protected her from some conflicts, but it had also made her vulnerable to others. Maybe it was time for a different approach. The next morning dawned clear and cool, perfect weather for the fitness challenge. The base had turned out in force, not just participants but spectators. Word had spread that this wasn't just a friendly competition. There were scores to settle. Maya arrived early and went through her warm-up routine methodically. She dressed in standard PT gear, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked exactly like what she was, a small, fit woman in her mid-30s who took care of herself. She did not look like a threat. Hastings was already there, surrounded by his crew of supporter officers. He was wearing a tank top that showed off his arms, and he was making sure everyone could hear his predictions about his performance. 300 pounds on the bench, easy, he was saying, and I'll finish that 3-mile run in under 18 minutes. One of his friends laughed. What about the pull-ups? 25 minimum, Hastings said confidently. Then his eyes landed on Maya and his expression hardened. Unlike some people here, I actually maintain my fitness. The comment was clearly directed at her. Several people turned to look. Maya met Hastings's gaze steadily but said nothing. She just continued her warm-up. What's wrong? Hastings called out, nervous, thinking about dropping out. No, sir, Maya said calmly, just preparing. Preparing to embarrass yourself, Hastings muttered, but loud enough for people to hear. Master Chief Nash appeared at Maya's shoulder. He wasn't in PT gear, he wasn't competing, but he'd made a point of showing up to watch. Remember, he said quietly, you've got nothing to prove to him, only to yourself. I know, Maya said. But if you happen to make him cry, I wouldn't complain. Maya smiled despite herself. The competition began with the bench press. Participants would get 3 attempts to establish their maximum lift. Hastings had arranged for himself to go last, guaranteeing maximum attention. Maya was scheduled in the middle of the pack. She watched as the earlier competitors went through their attempts. Most of the men were putting up respectable numbers, 225, 250, 265. The few women who'd entered were lifting less, but their form was generally better. Then it was Maya's turn. She approached the bench and lay down, settling herself into position. The bar was loaded with 135 pounds, a warm-up weight. "That's it," someone in the crowd murmured. "That's all she's attempting." Maya ignored them. She lifted the weight smoothly, controlled the descent and pressed it back up, perfect form. She re-racked the bar and sat up. "Add 50 pounds, she told the spotters. There was a ripple of surprise. 185 pounds was a respectable lift for anyone, male or female. Maya lay back down. The increased weight felt solid in her hands. She took a breath, lifted the bar clear, brought it down to her chest and drove it back up. Still smooth, still controlled. "Add 40, she said. Now people were really paying attention. 225 pounds. That would put her in the top tier of the competition so far. Hastings was watching with a frown. This wasn't fitting his narrative. Maya settled under the bar one more time. 225 pounds was well within her capability, but it would take focus. She gripped the bar, took 3 quick breaths and lifted. The weight came up slower this time, but it came up. She locked her elbows, held for a beat, and re-racked with the spotter's help. The crowd applauded. It was genuine appreciation for a good lift. Maya stood up and stepped away from the bench. She caught Hastings's eye and gave him a small nod, professional, respectful. His face was red. The rest of the competitors finished their attempts. A few men lifted more than Maya, but not many, and none of them had her technical precision. Then it was Hastings's turn. He made a big production of chalking his hands and psyching himself up. The bar was loaded with 275 pounds, a weight Nash had said Hastings could barely handle. "Let's show them how it's done," Hastings announced. He lay down, gripped the bar, and lifted it clear. But as soon as he started to lower it toward his chest, Maya could see the problems. His elbows were flared too wide. His shoulder blades weren't properly retracted. His descent was uncontrolled. The bar came down, touched his chest, and Hastings tried to press it back up. It didn't move. He strained, his face turning purple, but the weight wasn't budging. The spotters had to help him re-rack it. "Just warming up," Hastings gasped. "Put on 300. The spotters exchanged glances but did as he asked. 300 pounds. Hastings had been bragging about benching 315, so this should be manageable for him. It wasn't. He couldn't even get the bar off the rack without the spotters essentially lifting it for him. After a humiliating struggle, he gave up. "Equipment's not balanced right," he complained. "I'll file a report." But nobody was buying it. They'd all just watched multiple people use the same equipment successfully. They'd watched Maya Chen, a woman half Hastings's size, lift 225 with better form than Hastings had shown with 275. The pull-up competition was worse for him. Hastings managed 12 before his grip gave out, respectable, but nowhere near the 25 he'd promised. Maya, using a technique that maximized efficiency, completed 20. By the time they got to the 3-mile run, Hastings was visibly rattled. He'd gone from confident to desperate, and desperation made him sloppy. He pushed too hard too early and faded in the final mile, finishing in just under 20 minutes. Maya finished in 17:45. When the scores were tallied, Maya Chen had placed third overall out of 43 competitors. She'd beaten every woman in the competition and all but 2 of the men, both of whom were enlisted Marines in their early 20s who did nothing but train. Hastings had placed 17th. The base commanding officer, Captain Morrison, presented the awards himself. He shook Maya's hand and gave her a knowing look. "Impressive performance, Lieutenant," he said. "Very impressive." "Thank you, sir," Maya replied. As the crowd dispersed, Hastings stormed off without a word. But Maya noticed Nash having a quiet conversation with Captain Morrison. their eyes occasionally drifting toward where Hastings had disappeared. Torres found Maya afterward beaming. The young sailor had placed 8th. "I did it," Torres said. "I actually did it. And you know what? Nobody said anything about women not belonging because I proved I did." "You proved it to yourself," Maya corrected. "That's what matters." But even as she said it, Maya knew the truth. She hadn't just competed today. She'd sent a message. And judging by the looks of respect she was getting from people who'd ignored her for weeks, the message had been received. The Monday after the fitness challenge, Maya arrived at the gym to find Master Chief Nash waiting for her with an unusual expression on his face, something between satisfaction and concern. "We need to talk," he said. They went to the office, and Nash closed the door. "Captain Morrison wants to see you at 1,000 hours, Nash said. "And before you ask, no, you're not in trouble. The opposite, actually." Maya waited. "Hastings filed a complaint," Nash continued. "Claims the fitness challenge was unfairly administered and that you somehow cheated." "That's ridiculous," Maya said. "Of course it is. Everyone knows it is. But here's the thing. When Morrison started looking into the complaint, he started looking into Hastings too. And he found some interesting discrepancies in the supply department's records." Maya remembered the inventory issues she'd heard about. "Turns out Hastings has been running a little side business," Nash explained. "Selling excess gym equipment and pocketing the cash. Nothing huge, a few $1,000s over the past year, but enough to get him court-martialed if Morrison wants to press charges." "How did this connect to me?" Maya asked. Nash smiled. "It didn't directly. But when Morrison pulled Hastings's personnel file, he noticed that Hastings had filed 3 other complaints in the past 2 years, all against women, all claiming they were incompetent or had gotten their positions through favoritism. None of the complaints went anywhere, but the pattern was clear." "So Morrison thinks this is retaliation," Maya said. "Morrison knows it's retaliation," Nash corrected. "And he's not happy about it. He's also not happy that he's had one of the Navy's top physical training specialists working as a gym attendant for 3 weeks without anyone telling him." Maya felt a chill. How did he find out? "I may have mentioned it," Nash said with studied innocence. "During our conversation after the competition, I may have also mentioned your master's degree, your publications, and the fact that you designed the training program currently being used by half the SEAL teams on the East Coast." "Master Chief." "You told me not to intervene," Nash interrupted. "And I didn't. I just provided information to a commanding officer who asked what I knew about one of his personnel. That's my job." Maya couldn't help but smile. Nash had found a way to help her without overstepping. "So what does Morrison want?" she asked. "You'll have to ask him yourself," Nash said. "But if I had to guess, I'd say he wants to know why someone with your credentials has been emptying trash cans and wiping down equipment instead of doing what you're actually qualified to do." At exactly 1,000 hours, Maya presented herself at Captain Morrison's office. His assistant showed her in immediately. Captain Morrison was in his late 50s, a career naval officer with a reputation for fairness and a low tolerance for nonsense. He gestured for Maya to sit. "Lieutenant Chen," he said, "I've been reading about you. Very impressive background." "Thank you, sir," Maya said. "I've also been reading about Lieutenant Commander Hastings," Morrison continued. "Less impressive. In fact, deeply unimpressive." He leaned back in his chair. "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Did Hastings assault you last week in the gym?" Maya hesitated. Then she decided that if she was done being invisible, she needed to be honest. "Yes, sir, he did." "Did you report it?" "No, sir." "Why not?" Maya chose her words carefully. "I didn't think it would help the situation, sir, and I thought I could handle it myself." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "You shouldn't have to handle it yourself. That's what the chain of command is for." He pulled out a file. "I'm offering you a choice, Lieutenant. We can pursue formal charges against Hastings for assault, or we can handle this administratively. Either way, he's done here. I'm having him transferred to a shore station where he can't hurt anyone's career while we sort out his theft charges." "I don't need him charged with assault, sir," Maya said. "What he did was wrong, but I think he's going to face enough consequences already." Morrison nodded approvingly. "That's generous of you. Now, let's talk about your assignment. I'm told you were sent here to fill a temporary shortage in PT staff, but looking at your qualifications, that's like using a surgeon to put on Band-Aids." "I go where I'm ordered, sir," Maya said. "Yes, but orders can be changed," Morrison said. "Here's what I'm proposing. We have a serious problem with physical readiness across the base. Too many sailors failing their fitness tests, too many injuries from improper training. I want you to spend the next 3 months conducting a complete review of our PT program and developing recommendations for improvement." Maya felt a spark of interest. This was real work, the kind of challenge she'd been craving. "I'd be happy to do that, sir," she said. "There's one condition," Morrison added. "You'll be working with Commander Lisa Park at Little Creek. I've already spoken with her, and she's willing to provide remote consultation. Between the two of you, I want a program that becomes the model for the entire Navy." Maya left Morrison's office an hour later with a new assignment, new authority, and a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer the invisible gym attendant. She was Lieutenant Maya Chen, expert in physical training and human performance, officially tasked with making a difference. Over the next week, word of what had happened spread through the base. Hastings was gone, transferred abruptly to a desk job 3,000 miles away. The investigation into his theft was ongoing, but everyone knew his career was over. More importantly, people started looking at Maya differently. Sailors who'd walked past her for weeks without acknowledgement now stopped to introduce themselves. Officers who dismissed her now asked for her advice on their training programs. And seaman apprentice tours stopped by the gym almost daily, soaking up every bit of knowledge Maya was willing to share. "I got accepted into the search and rescue program," Tours told her one afternoon, practically glowing. "They said my physical performance scores were outstanding." "That's because they are," Maya said. "You earned this." "I know," Tours said, "but I also know I wouldn't have even tried if you hadn't encouraged me. Thank you for that." After Tours left, Maya stood in the gym. Her gym, really, since she was now in charge of the entire facility, and reflected on the past month. She'd come to Coronado expecting nothing, planning to keep her head down and do her time until she could return to Little Creek. Instead, she'd been challenged, disrespected, and underestimated. And in responding to those challenges, she'd found something she didn't know she'd lost: her voice. Nash found her there, staring out at the rows of equipment. "Penny for your thoughts," he said. "Just thinking about how things change," Maya replied. "Speaking of change," Nash said, "I got a call from the team. They're coming home early. And when they heard what happened here, they asked if you'd be willing to come back to Little Creek to brief them on your new program." Maya smiled. "Tell them I'd be honored." "There's something else," Nash added. "The CO at Little Creek wants to make your position permanent. Head of Physical Training and Readiness for all of Naval Special Warfare East Coast. It would be a big promotion, big responsibility." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I'd ask you," Nash said. "But between you and me, I think you should take it. Not because you have to prove anything to anyone. You've already done that. But because there are a lot of young sailors like Tours out there who need someone like you showing them what's possible." Maya thought about it. A permanent position, real authority, the chance to shape training programs for the entire community. It was everything she'd worked toward for a decade. "I'll think about it," she said. Nash nodded and turned to leave, then paused. "You know what the guys on the team are calling you now?" "What?" "The Dragon Lady," he said with a grin. "Not because you're scary, though you can be when you need to be, but because in Chinese mythology, dragons are symbols of strength, wisdom, and power. They protect what matters." After he left, Maya returned to her office and found an email waiting. It was from Lisa Park. "Heard about your new assignment. Proud of you for finally stepping into the light. Remember what I told you about making waves? Looks like you made a tsunami. Call me when you're ready to talk about the Little Creek position. I think it's time for you to stop being the Navy's best-kept secret." Also, Hastings is apparently trying to claim he was set up. Nobody's buying it. Sometimes karma works fast. Lisa. Maya read the email twice, then started drafting her response. But before she could finish, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Lieutenant Chen," she answered. "Lieutenant, this is Admiral Sarah Hendricks from Naval Special Warfare Command." Maya straightened reflexively. Admiral Hendricks was a legend, one of the highest-ranking women in the Navy. "I've been hearing interesting things about you." "Yes, ma'am," Maya managed. "I'm calling to personally offer you the position at Little Creek. I've reviewed your work, and I've spoken to people who know you. The Navy needs more officers like you, people who lead by example and aren't afraid to stand their ground when challenged." "Thank you, Admiral," Maya said. "I also want to apologize," Hendricks continued. "What happened with Lieutenant Commander Hastings should never have occurred. The fact that you felt you couldn't report it, that you thought you had to handle it alone, tells me we still have work to do in creating an environment where all our sailors feel supported." "Ma'am, You don't need to make excuses for our failures," Hendricks interrupted gently. "What I need from you is your answer. Will you take the position?" Maya looked around her office, thought about the work she could do, the lives she could impact, the changes she could make. She thought about all the years she'd spent being quiet, being careful, being invisible. She was done with that. "Yes, ma'am," Maya said. "I'll take it." "Outstanding," Hendricks replied. "Welcome to your new assignment, Commander Chen." "Commander," Maya repeated, startled. "The position comes with a promotion," Hendricks said. "You've earned it, congratulations." After the call ended, Maya sat in stunned silence. Commander. She'd just been promoted to commander, skipping over lieutenant commander entirely. It was almost unheard of. She picked up her phone and called Lisa. "I'm taking the job," Maya said when her friend answered. "I knew you would," Lisa replied. "When do you start?" "They want me there in 2 weeks." "Perfect. That gives us just enough time to plan your welcome party. I'm thinking we invite every SEAL team on the East Coast and make them do burpees until they cry." Maya laughed. "That seems excessive." "Nothing is excessive when we're celebrating you finally getting the recognition you deserve," Lisa said. Then her tone became serious. "I'm proud of you, Maya. Not for beating Hastings, though that was satisfying, but for deciding to stop hiding. The Navy is better when you're visible." That evening, Maya took a walk along the beach near the base. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She'd come to California feeling frustrated and undervalued. She was leaving as a commander with a position that would let her shape the future of naval special operations training. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nash, "Heard about the promotion. Told you that you should make waves. Congratulations, Commander." Maya smiled and typed back, "Thanks, Master Chief. Couldn't have done it without you." His response came immediately, "Yes, you could have. You just needed to believe it." Maya put her phone away and continued walking. She thought about Derek Hastings and felt something unexpected: pity. He'd had every advantage: rank, gender, institutional support, and he'd squandered it all on his own arrogance and insecurity. He'd seen a woman doing her job and felt threatened by it, felt the need to diminish her to make himself feel bigger. And in the end, his fear of her competence had been exactly what exposed his incompetence. She thought about Tors and the other young sailors who'd been watching, who'd seen that skill and dedication mattered more than appearances. She thought about the programs she would build, the lives she would impact, the culture she would help change. Most of all, she thought about the moment Hastings had pinned her against that wall, trying to intimidate her into submission. He'd seen a small woman and assumed she was weak. He'd seen a physical trainer and assumed she was unimportant. He'd been wrong on both counts. Maya Chen was many things. She was a lieutenant commander, no, a commander now. She was an expert in human performance. She was a scientist, a leader, and a mentor. She was the woman who trained Navy SEALs, who had earned the respect of the most elite warriors in the world through years of dedication and excellence. But more than any of that, she was someone who refused to be made invisible. The sun dipped below the horizon, and Maya turned back toward the base. She had 2 weeks to wrap up her work here, to ensure a smooth transition, to set up her successor for success. And then she had a new life to begin, a bigger platform to work from, and a navy to help transform. Derek Hastings had tried to prove she didn't belong. Instead, he'd proven exactly why she did. And that, Maya thought as she walked back through the gathering darkness, was the most satisfying twist of all.